Africa is in mourning over the loss of one of its most respected leaders after the passing of Zambia's founding president, Kenneth Kaunda. A 21-day mourning period has been declared by the Zambian government, with flags flying at half-mast and all forms of entertainment suspended. Affectionately known as KK, he spearheaded majority rule in Zambia, becoming the country's first president in 1964. In 1991, he was voted out of office in the country's first multi-party elections. Kaunda is widely regarded by Zambians as the father of the nation. Dickson Jere is a journalist and, in fact, a former press secretary to President Rupiah Banda. He joins us now live from Lusaka in Zambia. Dickson, it's great to have you on the show this morning. Certainly, the passing of KK signaling the end of a particular era of leadership here on the African continent.
Precisely. He was one of the remaining founders of the African Union, or the predecessor organization of African Unity. And here in Zambia, of the first cabinet which he constituted when he formed government, he was the remaining surviving person. So his death signifies the end of an era of the old leaders.
In particular, you know, as Zambia mourns the death of the father of the nation, as he is known to Zambians, you know, countries like Zimbabwe, countries like South Africa, also paying considerable tribute to Kenneth Kaunda, given the role Zambia played under his leadership. I'm talking about South Africa now, under the apartheid government.
Yes, he is widely respected within the region because he was one of the few leaders then who stood up against apartheid in South Africa, but also he invested heavily in liberating the entire Southern Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe. He made sure that he uses the resources for Zambia to assist the guerrilla warfare which was taking place in this country to allow for black rule in these countries.
In Zambia itself, though, he also did something quite incredible for the region at the time. I mean, given the bloody anti-colonial struggles that were unfolding in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, in Angola during that period, Kaunda managing to achieve independence for his country without engaging in that level of violence.
Yes, he believed in non-violent campaign, and that was one of the things which even his contemporaries used to say he was a weak leader when it comes to taking arms to fight the minority rule. But he managed to use persuasive negotiations and also to try and use diplomacy in times of need. So that helped him acquire a good name as a peacemaker. And he always walked with his white handkerchief, which he said signifying peace. So that is one of the legacy he has left, that he managed to gain independence in Zambia using peaceful means.
Yeah. I mean, what a prolific life and career, not only as the leader of Zambia, but also, you know, in his later years from the early 2000s, the kind of work that he did in Zambia in terms of HIV and AIDS education, really putting himself at the front line of many campaigns.
Yes, when he retired from active politics, he decided to concentrate his efforts by fighting HIV/AIDS under his Kenneth Kaunda Foundation. And I think he'll be remembered mainly for having been one of the first to publicly admit that his son had died of HIV-related disease. And at that time, it was unheard of for one to admit that their children or their relative had died of HIV/AIDS. So that remains one of the significant pronouncements which he made during his fight for against HIV/AIDS. And that opened up so many Zambians to start admitting when they have HIV that it's just one of the diseases which can be announced openly without having stigma.
Our leaders on the continent are complicated characters in many respects, aren't they? And Kenneth Kaunda is no exception. We talk about, when the democratic elections came to Zambia in 1991 and he was actually ousted from power by the opposition. The way he sort of waved the white flag, accepted defeat incredibly gracefully. But in the years preceding that, there was one period where he was responsible for actually crushing dissenting voices in the country.
Yes, I think that contributed to his defeat, that in his later years he became dictatorial. He had banned multi-party politics in 1971 and allowed only one party, which was the United National Independence Party, UNIP. And under the one-party state, he became a bit of a strong man, and that contributed to dissent in the country. As we headed towards 1990, he allowed multi-party politics, but again, he participated in those elections and lost. Despite having lost, he conceded peacefully and bid farewell to the Zambian that he was retiring to go to the farm and concentrate on his farming. But down the line, 1996, he was back again, trying to relaunch himself and gain political power. But unfortunately, he was stopped from standing after the government then amended the constitution to stop a person with a foreign parentage from contesting the election. So that's how his political career was ended in 1996.
Yeah. So we're hearing now about a 21-day mourning period that has been declared by the Zambian government, flags in the country flying at half-mast, all forms of entertainment suspended. As a journalist working in your country, how are people there receiving the news of his death? Look, he was 97 years old. It was a life well lived, as you've just described to us, various aspects of his legacy. But what was the kind of reaction you were seeing?
He has been mourned across the spectrum. Everybody is issuing statements. WhatsApp groups are all filled with his messages of condolences. He became a father figure in his later years. Despite his bad governance in the later years of his presidency, after he left, I think he cultivated himself into a good father figure of the nation, that all political leaders, regardless of their political persuasion, they saw him as a uniting factor. They always went to his house to meet him, seek counsel, and so on. So his mourning has been well received, that 21 days of mourning. There'll be no music being played which is of entertainment nature. All radio stations will be playing solemn music. Flags will fly at half-mast for 21 days, and as by government procedure and Zambian regulations, you'll be accorded a full state funeral, which will be administered by the Zambian Defense Forces.
Dickson Jere, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Dickson joining us live there from Lusaka in Zambia. He works as a journalist there, of course, as we continue to reflect on the life and legacy of Zambian President Kenneth Kaunda.